Hello, and welcome to the Flix Forum podcast, where each episode we go back and we look at a Netflix original film in the order of release. This episode, we have Netflix 193rd film from 2019. It's the animated Christmas film, Klaus. It's directed by Sergio Pablos and stars the voices of Jason Schwartzman, J.K. Simmons, Rashida Jones, Will Sasso, Neda Margrethe Labba, Sergio Pablos, MacDonald and Joan Cusack. I'm Jesse, and as always, here with MJ. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Excellent. I love animated films, so I'm very happy to be able to talk about one. It's been a while, so it's nice.
Yeah, well, I mean, I didn't realize until last week when you mentioned that this one's going to be only the second animated feature, that original Netflix film. So obviously the second one that we've done in our podcast. And this is what, 193? This is it's not something that they're really diving into at the moment at this point in time, Netflix.
Yeah, I think as we sort of keep heading forwards, I think there's a lot more that pop up. But yeah, obviously at this stage, it wasn't on their priority list. And maybe because they take, lots of these animated films are often in production for many, many years. So maybe by the time they actually set up their, putting out a lot of these features, it takes 3 to 4 years to get one up and going.
It's a really good point. And like this one we'll get to in a sec, but like so many others, everyone was kind of balking at it. And we've heard that story so many times where every other studio is like, oh, should we do this? Should we not? And Netflix is like, we'll do it. What do you want? Yeah. So it's another one of those stories.
Good. All right, well, we start our show with the Fast Flicks, where do a quick little summary of what the film is all about. Give us your Fast Flicks for Klaus.
Well, this is a fast one. This doesn't give much away, but it's the multifaceted tale on the origin of Santa Claus and his small town origins. I didn't realize I used the word origin.
Use the word twice. That's right. Well, yeah, I guess the title sort of gives it away a little bit that it is to do with Santa. But if you go into this without that context, I guess it might be a bit more of a reveal about the origins, which are sprinkled throughout, I guess. But I've done the same sort of thing. I've just said a Santa origin story revolving around letters and self-discovery.
Oh,
sweet. So we'd like to move into talking about how this one arrived at Netflix. And I think this has got a big story. So I'm very interested to hear how you've managed to put it all together succinctly.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't want to do everything and take things away from things that you might want to say. So I will try and keep it brief, but it's a cool story. Basically, Sergio Pablos, not a name that I was familiar with, but basically worked on as an animator on a lot of Disney films in the early days, such as Hunchback of Notre Dame, Hercules, Tarzan, those kind of era Disney films. He set up his own animation studio in Madrid, in Spain, and he really wanted to develop this traditionally animated film. Obviously, at the time this was made, and even now, it's a lot more CGI. But he wanted to explore how the animation in general, rather than going down the computer path, he wanted to go back to the basics. And I think, in essence, this film became the first traditionally hand-drawn animated movie that made use of volumetric lighting and texturing to give it that 3D look. And it's funny, like, it certainly doesn't look like those movies from sort of the 90s. That lighting that they have used, and I'm not even going to pretend to think about how they've done it all. It works wonderfully. So that was the crux behind why he wanted to make the film and how he came to making the film. Then it was a case of trying to shop it around, and they first teased the project in April 2015. Now that's probably before Netflix even had original films on their slate. So at the time, this new studio was seeking investment, co-production. They wanted distribution partners. Most studios rejected it because it was too risky. Something that is not surprising, something we've heard a lot. So a couple of years passed. November 2017 is when Netflix came on board. They decided they had acquired the global rights to Klaus. And at the same time, they had cast Jason Schwartzman, Rashida Jones, J.K. Simmons, Joan Cusack, pretty big names. And they announced that it was going to be part of their Christmas 2019 release slate. And in March 2019 was when it was first reported they were planning on doing an Oscar qualifying run for Klaus in theaters. Obviously, for a film to be nominated for an Academy Award, it needs to have a theatrical run. And it was listed as one of the 10 films that they were negotiating with chains to give this limited release to in August. So at that point in time, I found interesting that Sergio Pablos found that working with Netflix was unsurprising to us because we covered this on a lot of our pods. Quite different from other studios. He would still be given a lot of notes about creative choices that they wanted him to make, but the difference with Netflix was these were just suggestions. They weren't mandatory. And they love giving the director all the power to make the story they want to make. So Klaus was released theatrically in select theatres on the 8th of November 2019. It was then released on Netflix worldwide on the 15th of November. In January 2020, Netflix had reported that the film was watched by 40 million members over the first 4 weeks of release, a staggering number. It was nominated for the Best Animated Feature at the Academy Awards, eventually losing out to Toy Story 4. And the budget came in at around $40 million, which is pretty low for an animated film, but the highest grossing films of $40 million are things like The Sixth Sense and Wedding Crashers, but in more recent years, the John Wick sequels were 40 million, Knives Out was 40 million, Conjuring 2 and 3, 40 million. Just goes to show that it's not big budget stuff, but you can do good stuff with it. So that's a nutshell. There's so much more to talk about though.
Yeah, you've done a really good job. Yeah, adding into that 40 million sort of idea. As you mentioned, for an animated film, that's very, very small. And like you meant, like a lot of the drama rom-com sort of actions, the mid-range sort of ones, that's where you sit with that 40 mil. So the sort of closest comparison in this sort of form you can even look at is more like your stop motion, like your Fantastic Mr. Fox and Frankenweenie. I think Frankenweenie was 39 million, but look, like they're the types of films that you can get for around that budget. So obviously CGI is expensive, and that's where a lot of the animation is at the moment, and that's why recent sort of films are going to be pushed up. So yeah, very, very interesting. You mentioned about the awards. I think altogether it did end up winning 11 awards altogether, nominated for another 26. And as you mentioned, the Oscar nomination, it did win the BAFTA for Best Animated Feature that year, though. So the BAFTA is obviously recognised as a very good award over the the British version of the Academy. So that's nice. What else have I got to add? It's hard. I think so. IMDb, we do like our IMDb, and they have their top 250 list, which a lot of people use to be like, cool, what are the top 250 films of all time? So this is actually, I think this is our first film that's actually been on that list. It sits at number 199 on IMDb's top 250 movies of all time. So that's a nice little thing to see.
And that's obviously rated by fans. That's not anyone's opinion. So that's good to know.
It is nice. Jason Schwartzman. I thought it was interesting that a lot of the lines that he put into this through his character of Jesper they're all ad-libbed. Well, not all of them. The director, I think Sergio Pablos, reckoned about 40% of the dialogue in the final script in the final film is scripted. So it's a lot of trust in your voice cast to allow them. I
love that. You can see it too, right? You can sort of get the feel for that when you're watching it.
Yeah, exactly. Tagline for this one. Did you see the tagline?
No, I didn't.
It had two. The first one, not so great. It was the first one was "Welcome to the Jingle." To me,
that's bad.
That's nothing. That's rubbish. The other one,
it's nothing to do with the film. It's just like a Christmas promotion crap. Yes. Yeah.
The other one was better. It was "Discover the friendship that launched a legend."
I have no doubt that Sergio Pablos didn't write the first one.
No, that's just cash in on Christmas. The translations for this one around the world in Mandarin, Greek, Hungarian, Italian, it all had a subtext. So it was Klaus, the Secret of Christmas. So that seemed to be the title that it went for in a lot of places. Maybe the idea of Klaus just wasn't, in Australia we go Santa Claus, I guess. Maybe it's not as prevalent in those places.
Sure.
France, it was called The Legend of Klaus. And in Turkish, it was Klaus, the Magic Plan. So that was another little spin on this.
Okay. I'm happy with what we've got, but
good. Well, let's talk about the consensus. What are people saying about this film?
Well, I mean, if it's in the top 200 IMDb films, it's obviously pretty popular in some respect. But here's IMDb. It's sitting at an 8.1 out of 10 off 143,000 ratings. This is a proper film, Jesse. We're coming off a film last week. I'm actually just going to go check on my notes. IMDb last week for the movie House Arrest had 1,600 ratings. This one has 143,000. This movie was huge. And Letterboxd is even better, more or less. It's more or less the same, but 4.1 out of 5. 154,000 ratings. Everyone watched this movie and everyone loved this movie.
It's high. It's very, very high. Rotten
high.
Tomatoes, again, it's super, super high. This is actually certified fresh. So it's got 73 critics that have given it a fresh rating, sits on 95%. And the audience had it even higher. The audience had it at 96% and over 2,500 ratings on Rotten Tomatoes, which is super high compared. Like last week, there was none. So, yeah, high.
It's crazy.
High.
Actually, during the pandemic, when you and I or Flix Forum did our bracket, see the greatest Netflix original film, we actually put this one in it. It must have only been a few months out for a few months though, so it's pretty fresh. And I don't think it made it past the first round, but it did get a lot of there are a lot of comments about it did better than it should have done considering it was so new. And I'd be curious if we did it again now. Yeah. It's had a lot more eyeballs. It's had 2 more Christmases for people to see it. It was. I'm glad we put it in there in the first place though.
Good. Well, what are your early thoughts on this one?
Well, I had watched this film. I watched this Christmas 2020. I reckon I watched it, or maybe last year. Anyway, I watched it and I loved it. And I was curious to see how I'd go on a rewatch watching it in June, basically as far away from Christmas as you can get. And it didn't change anything. This is just a great movie. It's just that incredible ability to explain the story of Santa Claus, make it believable enough. It's a largely logical and sensible story, but introducing these small portions of the magic of Christmas to make the legend of it all prosper and live on. They do such a great job. Everything fits, everything works in this film, and obviously it's got a ton of heart. So this is a belter.
Good. I'm glad. I think the Southern Hemisphere at the moment, the weather, sort of the coldness that we're feeling at the moment, made me actually feel like I was on set on a film, even though it's animated.
On Smearensburg.
Yeah, it didn't really grab me like I thought it would. But I think it's still a well-made Christmas story and a nice addition to the Netflix catalog.
Here's the thing. I had a look, and there's 150 people that gave it half a star on Letterboxd. Now you can chalk most of that up for people who just wanted to give it half a star. I just can't imagine people disliking this film. That's what really gets me. Yeah,
I mean, there's not a lot in it that you can't like. It's just whether that, and maybe I'm a little bit. When it comes to animated films, it's hard for me because I look at it and I go, so I look at them very distinctly different to, films with live action in them. And, you look at your ratings or how you perceive films like that. And then you look at some of the animated ones, you're like, well, did it hit those same marks? Did it create the emotion? Did it create the awe? Were you engaged the whole time? Were there parts that you weren't engaged with? And I find it really hard when I watch an animated film to be like, cool, where does this sit on films that I watch? Because I do have such a, just an interest in animation as a separate thing as well. It's tricky.
So because you do love animation as a rule, do you find you're a harsher judge? Is that what you're trying to say?
Maybe. I mean, because
there's been so many great ones.
Yeah, and I guess the current example would be Encanto, the Disney one, which is so popular and so well received. And, I think it's a good movie, but I don't think there are so many better animated films, and it makes it that sort of comparison makes it hard to be like, there's so much better stuff that you can go watch. Let's focus on some other. Yes, cool, you enjoyed it. Let's look at something else too.
Yeah, and I think there's different reasons. I think one of the reasons why Encanto and probably Frozen are probably the 2 good modern examples is those soundtracks, and they get the kids in, and it lives on so much more than just watching the movie. And Encanto definitely did that. That sort of had a real slow burn before it actually became a bit of a thing. And I agree with you. I thought it was fine. It was a good movie. But the way it captures children, I think, is probably the difference between that and something else that might not necessarily have that run that, say, Frozen had, that feels like it's never really left our consciousness.
True. All right. Well, let's talk about some characters in this one. Hit us off with who you want to talk about.
I thought you were just going to lead into Jesper for me, but I think Jesper is the man. You don't want me to start with.
If that's sure. I guess it's probably a story if we think about it, even though
it feels like a Jesper story. Look, Jesper's got a very, very familiar story arc, and I don't think anyone's trying to pretend that we're doing anything groundbreaking with this character. But basically, you see very early that he, despite the fact that he's this unlikable, selfish guy who doesn't really want to do anything for other people, you can see he's got that capacity to work. As soon as he lands in Smearensburg, instead of truly sort of throwing in the towel, he's out there the first day trying to get something done. So he's got it in him, and I think they need to have that in him. I think it's his sympathy and empathy for his fellow man that you see really grow in this film, and I think it begins by being an outsider in this really, really grisly and violent, almost Tim Burton-esque town that's been created. So he starts to realize that he might not be what he thinks he is, and he's actually kind of a better person than everyone in this town, and it sort of just changes him a little bit straight away. But I think you never really felt that, particularly by the beginning of the third act, that he was actually doing this work for his ticket home. And we've seen so many movies where someone's like has to do something for selfish reasons, and then they realize that what they're doing for is actually meaning so much more to them than they thought it was, and meaning more to other people, but then they get called out for their selfish reason. It's a very common storyline. But by the end of it, by the time his father rocks up on the door, you're like, this guy's in it for the whole thing anyway. He's not doing it for himself anymore. So that was great. And I thought Jason Schwartzman was great. I know you mentioned how he ad-libbed sort of 40% of his lines, and he really got into the character, and he really got a feel for what Jesper was, and that sense of humor, and that not taking himself too seriously and confusing himself between what he should and shouldn't do. I think that was really well captured.
Yep, I agree with everything that you said there. And even though this film is called Klaus, I think that realistically, Jesper, like, his arc is the Christmas story. Like, yes, you've got a guy that's making gifts for kids, but this is the guy that's delivering it. He's making the change in the people. Like, it's the Scrooge sort of story where you've got that development of those feelings and the warmth and looking out for each other. So I think like you mentioned, it is that generic sort of idea that you've got spoiled kid, privileged, young brat, need to be taught a lesson by your dad. But yeah, like you mentioned, realistically, the selfishness that we see from him at the start, it sort of disappears quite quickly. Like, in the background that that journey is to get home, but very quickly it's sort of goes to the back of your mind, because he does care for others. He is doing things to reach out, even though that getting those letters posted is such an important thing for him. He didn't do it in a way where he sort of went out of his way to. He didn't go out of his way to do something really bad to get what he wanted. He was doing nice things to get what he wanted, and he didn't need to change that up, which was a nice sort of thing.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I think it actually links nicely into Klaus in that sense, where, because he does have his own little arc, and his arc's more inspired by, for lack of a better term, the magic of Christmas, because he comes from this really, when we meet him, very placid beginning, which you sort of learn stems from basically the ultimate heartbreak. He has these dreams of becoming a father with this big family, and that gets burnt down, and combine that with the death of his beloved wife, it's kind of just turned him into this recluse, and he's so reserved, and you understand why. And the idea of delivering a toy to a child sparks this appeal in him, because this is the reason that he was so passionate about his life before all this stuff happened was to be a giver of toys to kids, in a sense. But when that first happens, he doesn't entirely let himself go. He slowly thaws out, so to speak, because
well done.
But before becoming the true man that he is, this real giving man, which was always a part of him and is part of his soul. And I think it's really cool in a visual sense. And I sort of read that when the animators were designing Smearensburg, they use a lot of sharp angles and triangles to show that this environment wasn't very friendly. It wasn't very comfortable. And in contrast, Klaus and even his cabin and his barn, they're so sturdy and they're so strong. It just shows the difference that he has to the town, but that ability that strength has to impact the town. And I think that's a really cool visual choice as well.
Yes, I think that the idea of, you mentioned the word recluse, and I think that, as you've mentioned, like, it's really hard to add anything further, but without him having his own kids, and without him, obviously, well, he's lost his wife, so he doesn't have her as well. That idea of kindness can come through upholding her memory almost as well. Like I know that it sort of comes through the wind throughout that she's always there. She's that presence that isn't revealed until a bit later on. But it's nice to see that you know he didn't have to be a big. Like, he didn't have moments where, apart from the one moment where Jesper goes into the cabin and he loses it, he wasn't a gruff, horrible character that was like scary and mean, and he needed that change because that wasn't what it needed. It was like he just needed to come out of his shell and, like, you know, I really like your analogy of defrosting what it was. That was who, yeah, thawing out. That was who he was. Yeah, nice.
You're right, and it was just the perception of him that was scary, and that's the fun for a kids film, right?
Yeah.
I don't have too much more to say. I have a quick chat about Elva, but not that she had a very similar arc to Jesper in a sense that, apart from the fact that she actually already had that spark in her earlier in her life, and similar to everyone else in town, that spark had just been snuffed out, and it was just this nudge. And I suppose this is almost the magic of children. Helps reignite that spark for her, and we see this true loving, caring, and again very giving person that she is. And I think obviously the theme of giving is very important in this film to most of the characters, but just the power of what that can do to changing who you are, and but how bad circumstances can get you away from that in the first place.
Yeah, I thought interesting, like a teacher becoming a fishmonger. Like that was an interesting career change. I guess the grossness of the fish and the greys and the colors that you can incorporate through that. But yeah, that lost passion that she just needed to find, and as you mentioned, that idea of digging into the savings or to support the kids and build that classroom, and at the same time, it's probably hard to talk about them, but the two families, the Crumbs and the Ellingbows, like their ability to, through Jesper, through Elva, and through Klaus, to reunite a little bit, even though obviously you've got your really bad ones that are off by the side. The rest of the town are able to, through these three characters, sort of overcome their differences and reach out and be friends and change the.
Well, why are they doing it in the first place, right? They literally talk about, we do this because we've done it for years. I mean, it's a horrible reason to continue to do something, and it was it's so beautiful watching it all come together.
Good. The director, we touched on him fairly early before, Sergio Pablos. I thought it was interesting that, like, he came up with the Despicable Me, like was a part creator with Despicable Me. I found
that too. Yeah. He wrote the story for it. Like,
crazy. I'm sure he'll be living off that franchise for the rest of his life too. There is no worry at all about this guy's financial ability.
Well, does he have credits in the bank for that? How does that work? Like, we don't know the deal he struck.
Surely he's going to have something coming in. But like, you know, we mentioned before the Disney Renaissance sort of period, like he worked on a Goofy movie. Love that movie. Hunchback of Notre Dame, Hercules, Tarzan, Treasure Planet. And then also like on other films like Rio, Smallfoot, Ferdinand, just done an awful lot.
Yeah, well, as an animator, and then obviously this being his first foray into being a director, you have to assume the fact that he set up his own studio in Spain, you know, he's obviously put a fair bit of collateral in that from the start. So he's still betting on himself, which is great.
Yeah. All right. Scenes. I do find it hard with animated films to pick out specific scenes. I don't know what it is, but I find it hard. So how did you go?
Well, strap yourself in because I've got a few. When Jesper first arrives in Smearensburg, and you firstly see the people carrying the corpse, and then you assume it's a corpse, and then they drop it, and he looks at them, and she turns around and just gives them like shh, and it was so creepy, and it was so well done. And then you follow that by that little girl driving the carrot into the snowman. I thought that was just a wonderful way to introduce this town. It was so dark, and I said so Tim Burton-esque. I just like, all right, we're here, we're in. This is where the movie's going to be set. I'm all on board to see where this ends up. And the rest of the stuff, it's funny how much I didn't realize when I was noting these down as scenes that I enjoyed. I think I just love the fact that they used all these traditional tropes of Santa Claus that we know and love, and they gave them basically an origin story. This is how it all begun. I think the first delivery was wonderful, very fun, very placid. Klaus just basically forcing Jesper into the house, forcing him down the chimney because there was no other way down. Bang, that's how the chimney thing started. I love the fact that when the kid who threw the snowball at Jesper, he put the coal in his stocking just because there was coal there. I think he said, "Who's the loser now, you little brat?" I love that this is the story of the naughty and nice list, and then he explains it. The flying sleigh, it's just this magical, famous imagery that we know about Santa Claus. Watching it fly and go, "This is how it all started," and then seeing it crash and destroy on the ground was just so cool because you never see that side of it or assume that side of it. I thought that was fantastic. And then it goes to a few more things that sort of touched me emotionally more than anything else. So I don't love it when the main theme of a movie is literally a quote, but I do love the line of "a true act of goodwill will always spark another," and they push that home pretty hard. But it's a beautiful thing to hang your hat on. So I do want to call that out. I love that moment when the little Eskimo girl was calling out for Jesper only to realize that he'd stayed off the boat. I think that was just an emotional thing. I obviously had seen the film, so I knew he stayed, but I still really liked it when he just sort of called. He's like, "Hey," and she was so happy, and it was just like, "All right, let's get on with the finale. This is great." And then at the end, how do you finish a film like this where you've got an old man who you assume is going to die, but hang on, Christmas is a thing now. How are we going to do this? I thought they ended it really nicely. How he didn't die, he just disappeared and became the magical Santa Claus that we know he is. And I love the final line of the film where Jesper says, "Once a year, I get to see my friend." It was beautiful.
Yeah, I liked it. I did enjoy all those moments of linking Christmas in as well. About the story or the origin of Santa, and to I think the final moment there, it's nice as well. Just the thought that possibly, because I really enjoyed all the wind moments throughout this film where he's reflecting, whether it's with the bird feeders or whatever it was, and just Claus looking out, thinking about where is Mrs. Claus, and hopefully that end moment, maybe he's back with her. That'd be nice.
100%.
100%. Yeah, I liked the Jesper. So Margot's the little Indigenous girl that he didn't speak the language with, and I really liked it when Jesper took her to Elva to translate, and there was just this nice montage of them sitting around the table, and that song I really liked. I think it was called like Invisible or something, and it just played. It was like a pop song. It just was a really nice moment of the snow on the outside, of the cameras looking at them inside, and they getting to know each other. He's taking that time to cool. I don't understand this kid, but she's sat and listened to me, so I'm going to spend some time and help her out too. And yeah, like I mentioned, I like the win for Claus and the finale too. So, is there anything in here that you didn't like?
I had a stretch. I made sure I put something in here because I wanted to be balanced. At a stretch, when Jesper's dad comes at the end to pick him up, and he's basically just like, "Well done, mate. You did it. Let's go. Have your caviar. You can do whatever you want." Jesper's dad struck me as this man who would have been very proud of his son, but keen to continue to push him. And he basically would have been like, "Okay, you've done great here, but hey, did you enjoy it? What else can we do? Let's keep pushing yourself." But he was like, "Hey, go. You can live your life being a slob again." Like, it just didn't feel right about Jesper's dad. I think they maybe could have handled that better. It's like, "Hey, you're coming home because I got another job for you. You don't have to start the job. We're going to go on a little holiday." But whatever it is, it just didn't feel true to the man we saw at the start, because I think that's great parenting at the start. I had no issue with it. So
yeah, I didn't like that scene for a different reason, because I felt like when the dad arrived and all the friends and all the people found out the reason as to why Jesper was there, I feel like that they didn't give him a chance to even explain, and it was quite obvious that he had changed. They didn't even give him an opportunity to be like, "Look what like this. You guys are my friends. I respect you all. I've done all this with you for a reason. It's not because I still want to go home." I thought that was not done as nicely as it probably could have been. Just an opportunity for him to sort of say, "Hey guys, I want to stay here with you." They didn't even like. Yeah, I just thought that was not great.
At least they didn't entirely cut him off, though. There was a level of when he came back, they were like, "All right, you're still our guy." So,
well, Santa gave him a little bit of a hard time.
He did make him burn it.
Yeah. The start, the opening, the whole having a army school for post people, I just thought that was lame. I just thought that was ridiculous. And the fight, I didn't like the conclusion, like the chase with the presents at the end and the decoy subplot. Christmas doesn't have to be about gifts, and it would have been nice to see all those presents, if they were the real presents, drop off the cliff, and we still see the town happy in some way doesn't have to be about giving. It can be about friendship, family, love.
It's a nice call, actually. It could have been very strong.
Yeah, because you don't like, cool. Oh, they were decoys. We've still got the presents. Cool. Let's all have the sentimental value of Christmas back. Yeah. Anyway,
it could have been a level, but then I guess in terms of the origin story, the presents are still a huge part of it. And if you came back and this is how Christmas didn't need presents anymore. It's like, hang on, Christmas still does that. But I like that. It would be great if the bad family, the two dodgy families, came back like, hey, we did it, and all the people like, who cares? We like these people.
Yeah, it's true. What are some themes and some ideas in this one?
Oh man, like I think the main thing obviously is the magic of giving, and obviously, wrapped around that, true act of goodwill will always spark another, which I think is very true. The whole pay it forward notion. I think one thing that can get lost a little bit, which is quite blunt, is the magic of kids and what kids can bring out in people. And this whole town basically turns because these kids firstly just want to get a present, and then they get a present and they enjoy playing with it, and they enjoy playing with the other kids, and all of a sudden they're doing good things, and the people in the town are like, why don't we do good things? Let's be good people. And it's all sparked on by what kids can do, kids' imagination. Kids don't have the same taint of life that we get as adults. The older we get, the more jaded we get. Kids don't have that, and I think we can all take a lesson out of how much fun kids have just being kids. There's a lot in that. There's also work with the idea of mending old wounds, and this is more to do with the feud between the families, not just doing something because that's the way it's been done before. And I love this idea as well that giving and selflessness can really turn a person. And I think most strongly out of all this is how a human spirit can really warm even the coldest of souls. And this town is full of people with really cold souls, and it was one man's idea of giving that kind of changed that.
Excellent. Yeah. I'll jump in off the back of that. That selfless act sparks another one, because it almost highlights too that you get more out of doing that than being out there to get something. Like everyone's out to get something. You get more out of being generous. You get more out of teamwork, collaboration, working together. Like that, they were a good team. Jesper and Klaus together, and like you mentioned, the townspeople moving past those old grudges, the resentment, and we saw that not just through Jesper himself about growing up and self-discovery and not wasting opportunities. This was an opportunity for the townspeople to get that as well. And the wind of his wife, it signals change, but also signals hope for Klaus as well, that he can keep going and be this character now for eternity. That sounds pretty a big thing to sort of commit yourself to, but yeah, that's how it sits. And the dying art of letter writing too. I mean, how good communication leads to good things. If you communicate well, you're gonna end up with good outcomes. So yeah,
that's a nice point. Yeah, it doesn't have to necessarily be literally about letters. Yeah, it's about communication.
Yeah. All right. What did you take away from this one?
Look, despite the fact this movie doesn't really do anything new, and I think watching the rewatch is what really got me. I'm like, oh, this film is a very familiar, very familiar story, very familiar arcs. The things that it does do, it does so well. It basically nails every reference, every idea, every theme it sets out to hit, and that's totally in my bag. When a film can just do that so cleanly and make it all fit, that's something that I really love. I couldn't recommend this movie more highly as a Christmas movie. It's arguably my favorite Christmas movie. It's a Wonderful Life has sort of always had that mantle, and I reckon they're kind of wrestling for number one spot for me. This is such a great Christmas movie.
Good. Yeah, I mean, I reckon I was about 15 minutes in, and all I could think of while watching this was I was getting massive Emperor's New Groove vibes, like the Cusco Pacho vibes from Emperor's New Groove. And I was really sad when I was reading up after watching it that there was another article I read where someone said the same thing. I was like, damn! It was literally mainly between the boat, the guy that drove the boat to start off with, and Jesper. It was just even the voice acting was like so similar, and the physical humor, those moments was just very much like that. That film, which gave me good memories. And then the same as well.
When you realize that,
because I wanted it to be an original idea. I wanted it to be like,
I was going to say it's nice. It's nice to have similar. Okay, gotcha.
And then the same with like, it's very much like there's a lot of Beauty and the Beast stuff that got me to like an isolated grump living in the snowy woods, and then like town marching with pitchforks, which led to me like thinking a little like this is almost a little bit too dark for little kids. Like it's an interesting thing because, but Santa, the idea of Santa, you want littlies to be able to get involved in it. So obviously, and the origins help that it goes to an older audience. But when you're thinking about that, are you 10 to 15-year-olds really going to be interested in watching this? I don't know.
10's not 10's old enough, I would have thought. But
yeah, sorry.
Are they
10 to 15 would
sorry.
be where you'd want people to watch this. And is this the sort of film that they're going to want to watch? Yeah.
True. Okay, I see what you're saying. I wonder if some of the violent stuff that we can sort of laugh at as adults, because it is dark, where the kids just kind of see the funny side of those sort of things without getting the connotations as much. I don't know. It's a good point though. I did think the same thing.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Did you go onto IMDb to look anything up?
I did twice actually. I did for Rashida Jones, even though I've seen this movie. I did for Rashida Jones, who plays Alva, obviously of Parks and Rec. And also I did know it was Norm MacDonald. He's obviously got a very distinctive voice, who is Mogan's the boat driver. But as soon as I heard, I'm like, is that Norm MacDonald? And then like the more you hear it, you're like, it's obviously Norm MacDonald. But I did jump on straight away for that.
Good. Yeah. No, I didn't get on at all. All right. Time for any questions. Anything that you wanted to ask?
Yeah, I don't know if you'll be able to answer it, but this didn't make much sense to me. Alva obviously is a teacher. There's no kids at the school, so she starts trying to save money to get out of there by selling fish. And then things get started up again at the school. She uses her own money to do stuff for the school. Does she not get paid as a teacher? I would have thought it would be more prosperous for her from a salary perspective to teach kids than to sell fish. But it felt like I'm not selling fish anymore, so I've got no money. It didn't quite add up to me. What's going on there?
Yeah, good question. I was more thinking like, so how does the town get fish now?
That's true.
But yeah, like surely once she's got the classroom, she'd have to pay to. Obviously, she'd taken over that room and turn it into a fish thing. So she needs to use her money to pay it to get it back to a classroom, and now she might get a wage. Now she'll be fine.
I hope so. I hope she's at least, I get maybe there was some upfront costs to get her, but I would have thought that she's going to be making more money than she was when she was. I don't know. I hope that those kids aren't getting free schooling. I don't think it's private school, so I'm not expecting the parents to pay for it. There must be some government subsidy for it. I don't know.
Well, it's probably just like, why do they need a postman living out there as well? Like,
well,
you'd send someone from the mainland once a week to collect it. That'd be it.
Yeah, he's basically only doing letters for them internally in that town where it's like everyone kind of sees each other anyway. It's a tough gig.
True. Yeah, I wouldn't want to do it. Yeah, I haven't got anything. So that means we're ready to finish this one off and give a rating out of 5. What are your final thoughts for this one?
Well, there's not much more I can say about it, to be honest. I adore this film. I adore how well it captures the spirit of Christmas. I adore its ability to have fun with everything we know about Santa Claus. I think it just does so much right, and it feels like it's just taking so much aim at me and my taste and my love for Christmas and the magic of Christmas. And I'm giving it 4.5 stars, Jesse.
Is that a bump up from original viewing?
From my original viewing, I gave it 4, and rewatching it, I was like, I reckon this is probably going to go a little bit higher, and it delivered. So
that's your equal top favorite Netflix film?
It is. I've got 3 with 4.5 stars now. I don't know if it's so close to our 200th episode. I want to give that one. I've got.
I know one's Oksha.
Oksha, and I also. I've got absolutely.
Yeah, I can't remember the other one.
What's the Jake Gyllenhaal one with the painting?
Oh, Velvet Buzzsaw. Did you get that for
Velvet Buzzsaw?
Oh, nice.
I did.
Cool.
I actually wasn't on the podcast for that one, but I watched it. That's a great movie. Excellent. So it's up there with those two. Yeah, it's
good. All right. Well, yeah. I mean, I'm not trying to be contentious. I don't like this sort of animation style, to be honest. But I agree. I think it looks great. I think it's really well made. It looks really nice. Just personally, I'm not a massive fan of the style. The start of it sort of dragged a little bit for me. I think like a lot of the goofy comedy, I don't know if it was needed to start off with, because once it got into the groove and it was more about heart, and I think that really shone through, and it was nice to feel those emotions more so than trying to make me laugh at slapstick sort of comedy to start off with. But I think it's a great addition to Netflix's Christmas catalog as well as its animation catalog. So giving it a 3.5 out of 5. Good movie.
It plays a big part in their animation catalog.
1 of 2 so far. We got socials at Flix Forum. Give us a look. Question I wanted to put out there is, when was the last time that you posted a physical letter?
You know what? I genuinely have, no, letter's probably the wrong word. Like in terms of like putting things in an envelope. Yeah, I actually have to do it right now because I've got a a footy card that I need to send in for redemption. So I took this out the other day. I'm like, I got to get to the post office and send that. But it feels like a very foreign thing to do.
Yeah, I think the last time I did it was probably 12 months ago, when you send in the packets from the footy cards to go in the draw to win something. Right. So, which they're not doing this year, which is a bit sad.
But it's easier than saving all those packets.
True. So yeah, I've got to do one of those redemptions too. But this is a bit random and nothing to do with what we're talking about. So,
can I ask you a question though, Jesse? Yes. This is not related to the film per se. I just thought of it then. But you love animated films. You talk about how you're probably a harsher judge because you do love them. Do you have a favorite animated film?
Yes, Beauty and the Beast is one of my all-time favorite films. Just the memories of being a very, very young child going to that film, and being petrified, but loving it, and the music, the story. It's one of my all-time favorites. Not just animation, but film altogether too.
My grandparents owned it on VHS, and that was like the only movie they had. So I used to watch it so much when I went over to their house, and similar to you, very, very fond memories of that. Yeah,
good, excellent. We'll be back again next week for another Christmas film, where we're in that Christmas package time. So from 2019, it's called The Night with a K before Christmas. It's directed by Monica Mitchell. It stars Vanessa Hudgens, Josh Whitehouse, and Emmanuel Chikwi. So that's what we've got next week.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I know of this film. I like that cast.
Yeah, it might be. Yeah, who knows? We've seen so many of these types of films. So what are they going to do that's going to make it different? That'll be the question.
Would I be correct in saying there's a sequel to this movie already?
I think so too. It does ring a bell. So that's what we've got for next week. As always, it's always nice to sit down and have a chat and talk about a good one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm feeling a bit Christmassy, so let's keep rolling with it.
Good. We've had like a positive sort of run. We haven't had an absolute bomb in a while, so it's been nice.
That's foreboding, Jesse.
Yeah. Well, let's see. I will see you next week.
See you then.